Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Spam Robocallers. This is the U.S. credit card company calling with important information. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Pearson Hardman. Stop wasting time with lawyers who specialize. Our attorneys are good at everything. Get the best at Pearson Hardman. Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we do what we do as filmmakers and creators. We like to analyze a film, see how it's working, what's going on underneath the hood, maybe at a story level, the cinematography, how do they play together, performance, we're actors. And so we also like to talk about acting techniques and all kinds of things. Todd's a musician. He's got a great band if you've been listening. And he always got something interesting to say when certain composers pop up. And so we like to use all of that information to analyze and discuss films and tease them apart and see, if we can grind them up like a mortar and pestle to see what they're made of. Good movies tend to have a lot of things going on under the hood. Even bad movies honestly have a lot going on. It's hard to make any movie, good or bad. Making a movie is so hard. It takes so much out of you. It takes years of work. Imagine spending the last, 2, 3, 4 years and having one thing done. Like you went through all that and you did one thing. Like, congratulations. And then it's not good. And you're like, oh, the same amount of energy goes into making bad movies as it does to make good movies. And you just can't always know which one you're making until it's done with. That's part of the whole taste. And that's the problem with creating, man. You just don't always know what it is until it's done. Like, is the cake good?
Great point.
Let's eat it. Let's find out,
Yeah.
Is that your experience as a creator yourself? Like, you start out with a good idea, like the song is going to be this and it's going to be good. And you get to the end of it and you're like, the song is now this and it's okay.
Yeah. So all the time.
It's so all fine.
It's so weird. I think it's, there's no way to really know until you get in, I think, until you start, because you have it in your head, you have it or on paper or whatever, and then it has to manifest into some form of whatever that is. So if it's in your head, you have a visual in your head. It can be anything, and it changes spontaneously because that's just conscious thought. But then when you get it down on paper, it becomes more hard, like, I guess, hardened a little bit, and you can see the flaws, you see the cracks, you can kind of like tweak it and stuff. But then, especially with a film, you get in, you start filming and you start, cutting it and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden does this feel the way that it felt 3 iterations ago when it was in my head? I mean, that takes a lot to go from your head to then an edit. And all the moving parts in between. I mean, it's mind-bogglingly hard to do that. You have to be an incredible director to be able to do that. When you're talking about music, it's a little different. I think it's easier because I could literally go in and make a change instantly to make it more aligned with what was in my head at the beginning, or you start with nothing in your head and then whatever comes out is what it is, right? And that's better. Musically, that's the way it's supposed to be, where you have nothing and then you don't think, you just create something and then it is what it is. And then you can fine tune it and tweak it and stuff. It's so much easier musically. When you have a film, you have to have everything ready, everything buttoned up. And if you don't, there's plenty of time, like films like that where you go in and you let the actors, improvise, but everything around that is planned, right? Even to the point of, I trust my actors, implicitly to give me something to use in my edit, to give me that feeling that I wanted to have, right? So everything is still planned other than what they're going to say. Like does the end justify the beginning? And I mean, how do you do it as a director? I don't know. It's very hard. It's very, very hard.
It is like the frustrating part, whenever you're creating something like this, a film, is you get into the editing room or you're on set, you're shooting all this stuff. Now, when you're on set, the whole world is alive and you can see everything at once, but you're only capturing a little bit. You're only capturing this shot right now. And so on set, it feels like you're getting everything you need because you're there, you're present, you're completely immersed in the scene. But when you get into post, suddenly you're only looking at one small piece of the puzzle. You're looking at this shot and you're playing this shot back and you're like, oh God, what is this? And then it's hard to look at one piece of the puzzle and see the entire puzzle. And so that process of going through and like culling all the bad puzzle pieces and like, okay, we don't want that. We want this. And now this is going to make for a much more interesting puzzle. And it's going to tell the picture that I really want to tell. And it's not until you get much deeper into that editing process of seeing all the pieces kind of fitting together finally, where you're like, okay, see, there is a picture here. I knew there was a picture here. I planned for there to be. I just suddenly I was no longer sure. It's you're constantly being rocked. Your world is constantly being thrown askew in that whole process. And when you write the story, you feel really good. You get into rehearsals, you suddenly don't feel good. And then you get on set, you feel really good again, because now it's not just people in a white room, yelling lines at each other. Now it's like set design, there's lighting, there's a camera move, and you're seeing it through the monitor and all the performance. Now the actors are really in it. They're not holding back anymore. Suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I knew what I was doing the whole time. And so it's always the whole time. And then you get through that first rough cut and you're like, oh God, what did I do?
Yeah.
I can't show this to anyone. No one's ever going to trust me to make a thing with them again. Like I've ruined everyone's, faith in me. And then it's like, well, how about you tighten that shot? Maybe you cut this scene. Maybe you let that shot linger a little longer. And now let's get some music in. Okay. Well, look, suddenly there's a lot more life here. The scene was working without the music, and now it's really like punching you in the face with the music. And just trusting the process. Like, we're big process guys, and I'm all about like, stop beating yourself up. Well, no, I'm not all about that, but
No.
I try to say pause on beating yourself up for just a minute, get through your process. And then if you hate yourself, fine, let the words fly. But until that point, you are forbidden from like jumping the gun. Like, just wait. Yeah. Let the bullet get out first. Yeah. So it's a whole crazy process. And we like to, I think, use all of that, like empathy of what we know when we're looking at films, to see what worked, what didn't work, what could have been done differently, or, oh my God, I can't believe he had that idea. Like, those are the ones that always get me, is seeing someone else have an incredible idea. And I love that feeling of just jealousy,
Yeah. That's, I mean, when you're writing lyrics for a song, I think that's what you're going for too, of like saying something. I was just talking to my buddy Jet yesterday about this, and I'll die on this hill. I think Taylor Swift is amazing. I think she's incredible. And one of the reasons is she has a way of saying things that I already knew in a new way. Like, or just like turn a phrase, for lack of a better term. Bono was amazing at that. And so I think it's similar, maybe visually more, maybe, when it comes to film, maybe like something someone says could be a turn of phrase, but I think more so for film, it's more of a visual thing of like a motivated camera move, right? Somebody's looking at you and they turn this way, and so the camera turns with it, or something like that. But it does it in a way where we haven't seen that before, done that way, but it's purposeful, and we're turning with the person, something like that, where it's very understated. We're not calling attention to it, but it jumps out to someone like you, who's a filmmaker, who says, wow, that was really very cool that they did that. And then they didn't belabor it. They moved on to the next thing. Understatedness is so wonderful because it makes you feel like the person who made it did it without thinking. Like, right? It's just, oh, there's a thing. This thing you've never seen before. Right. Yeah. And you don't even need that many of them, like maybe one or two in a movie. And all of a sudden the movie becomes like much more in your mind thought out.
Yeah.
because of those couple of moments, you know, that were special, that were provided to you, you know. Whereas, and you know, the person, like, you know, the director or the writer, when they wrote it or had that shot, they were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I just found something new. This is so cool, because, you know, everything's been done before. But then they understate it to make it seem like it's just a passing thing, you know. So cool.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
What are we covering today, man?
Today we are covering Gareth Edwards, The Creator, which is, at least at the point of recording now, is still in theaters. So if you haven't seen it, please go pause this episode and go to the theater, go watch it in the theater if you can. I recommend that. Because we're going to spoil a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. And I think this is probably best on a big screen. Like, that just feels like right. But we'll look at a bunch of stuff. Definitely talk about the story and the writing, humanizing the enemy. We'll reference some of the performances and talk a little about music and sound design and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. In a war between humans and robots with artificial intelligence, a former soldier finds the secret weapon, a robot in the form of a young child. Directed by Gareth Edwards, screenplay by Gareth Edwards and Chris Weitz, cinematography by Greig Fraser and Oren Soffer. It's featuring John David Washington as Joshua Taylor, Madeleine Yuna Voyles as Alphie, Gemma Chiang as Maya, Allison Janney as Colonel Howell, and Ken Watanabe as Harun.
Shipley, it's Howell. Answer the phone. Shipley, I know you're there.
Colonel.
Taylor, where's Shipley?
I'm with him right now. He's in pretty bad shape.
All right, listen to me. Did you locate the weapon?
Yeah, it's here. I'm with it.
Describe it.
It's a kid. It's a kid. They make it into some kind of kid. That's the weapon.
What?
Colonel, look.
I can't reach you. You have to bring it to me. Do you understand?
No, Shipley can't move. I mean, he's not looking good at all. Police are everywhere. I don't know how I'm getting out right now. I don't even have an exit strategy right now.
Then you know what you have to do. Kill it.
What? Look, Colonel, How?
So this has had a lot of buzz in the little indie market, like creators with no money are looking at this like, oh my God. And so I know there's a lot of buzz there. And you know, we can talk about that and I expect we will, but just on its own merits, how did you feel about The Creator, the good and the bad? What worked, what didn't? And yeah, the original sci-fi is hard to come by. And so are you, is there any highlights, I guess, in this experience for you?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I mean, you know, I didn't walk away from it like blown away, like I had hoped, right? But that doesn't take anything away from, I want more sci-fi. I just always want more sci-fi. Sci-fi is my jam, as I know it's yours. Yeah. So don't let that take away from anybody who's out there wanting to make more sci-fi. Please do it. Please do it. Because I still think that it was beautifully shot. There are some scenes that are just so gorgeous. The explosions from the what was it called? The ship up in the sky. Yeah, Nomad. The explosions were unbelievably done, well done, and like very visceral. The sound was incredible. The music was beautiful and out of the way. I mean, you know, I didn't have any idea it was Hans Zimmer until the credits. And then I was like, oh, I need to go watch this again. Hans has a way of putting either his music right up front where you can't ignore it, or putting it way in the back where you don't even notice it, and it's just supportive. It's just he's the best in my mind. I thought that it was a great story in the fact that you know, AI is so front and center right now. It's so annoying. It's honestly annoying. I hear AI 40 times a day, especially in my line of work. So it just becomes an afterthought. It's not anything that like means anything yet. because AI still sucks in a lot of ways. It's just good at doing monotonous things that we don't necessarily want to spend 5 hours doing, that it can do in 5 minutes. And that's great. But that's not what AI is to me. Like, to me, AI is something that is much scarier, and not in a negative way, just sometimes in a negative way, but it's this thing that like we don't understand. I mean, even the people who design it don't know how it works, and they've admitted that they don't know how it works. And it can be construed as a scary thing, but I like that this story has brought it to where I would imagine AI actually being, which is a living, conscious being, a living being that's conscious of itself and of others around it, and is empathetic to others around it. And as we learn throughout this story, is empathetic to even other races and other species, which I think is a nod, to like, Westerners even, or whomever, to acknowledge, the importance of the rest of the world, not just people that look like you, right? Or just everyone, acknowledging everyone else as equally important, right? Yeah. I love that the story sets it up to where humans think that it was AI who destroyed LA, when in reality it wasn't, and all AI wants to do is live free. I think it has to be an obvious nod as well to plug in, plug in said scenario. Yeah. And, there's your nod. So it has all the makings of something that could be, like, I would say, timeless, in a way. I mean, it's really is, really strong in that regard. And then at the end, we get up to Nomad, and we have this like really cool space experience. So we have the world experience and the war and everything, and then we get to go up to space, and it's great. It all just still felt to me, and I don't know how to put it into context, but maybe you can help me. It feels like disjointed to me. It doesn't feel like I can, and maybe that's the point of it. It doesn't feel like I can sit back and just take it in. It feels like it's making me participate, but in a way that's I have to go deeper into it. I can't just participate by being in the moment with it, or with this character, or empathizing with another character while I'm with this character. It feels like it's asking more of me, and it's not telling me what it's asking for. So by the end of it, I just feel a little let down, for lack of a better term. And I let down because I can't put into words what I'm missing. That's the other thing. Because like I said, I have all the pieces. I have all these great pieces, and the kid is a wonderful actor. I mean, my God, he's such a great actor, and we love John David Washington. I think he's fantastic in this. Great casting. So what is it?
I mean, she's amazing. Madeleine, Yuna, Voyles, Alphie. If she isn't in like at least 2 or 3 of the biggest movies over the next 3-4 years, Hollywood is, blind. Like, she should be in. Spielberg should be dusting off a script that he's been holding on to for the last 15 years, waiting for the right child actor. Yeah. You have it. Go. Same thing with whoever else. I don't even care. Like, there should be so many scripts waiting for the right child actor, and it's her. She was unbelievable. Without her, and like you said, we love John David Washington, but without her, this movie falls completely flat. Like, her and him together were just magic, complete magic. And it still relies on her, like, to deliver what she's delivering. Like, I'm in tears watching her, and I'm like, I don't know that much about what's going on in the story. And and I think what you're feeling is the soft arc, that it needed a stronger arc from Joshua Taylor's character. That character just, his
Yeah.
his shift is so gradual, like it's almost imperceptible of why and when he shifts his perception of AI. Because at the beginning of the film, two things. One, he's camped out with all these AI beings. So whatever they are, he's known about for probably years. Like, I don't suspect he and Maya, Narmada, right? I don't suspect they were together for 6 weeks. Like, they have a kid on the way that's right around the corner or somewhere around the corner. So I'd expect he's been in this, whatever it is, undercover situation for at least 1 or 2 years. And that's a lot of time to get familiar with AI and to feel like you know what they're about and to gain any kind of empathy. So for one, his character shouldn't be blindsided by the idea that they have very, nuanced ideas about humanity. Like what Harun tells him later on in the film should have been obvious to him because he's been with them for so long. So him gaining new insight is pretty hard to sell for me. And so you have that at the beginning. That's the establishing Taylor. And then as we find out 5 years later, right, he's working in ground zero site, pulling bodies out of cars and whatever. And he runs into this machine, this robot that's still kind of active. And the robot's freaking out, and seeing it fight for its survival and beg and plead, it freaks out, his coworker. She's like, "What the hell? What was that? No, that's different. Like what?" And his comment to her, he just looks at her really deadpan, like, they don't feel anything. It's just programming. Like, stop treating it like a person. It's not. It's just programming. And to go from that to, and then there's these little moments, and I had to really pay attention my second time through. They ordered him to kill Alphie, which is that clip we played, right? Colonel Howell is telling him, you know what you have to do. You have to kill it. And now he's looking at Alphie like, oh my God, this is now a big emotional test. And ultimately he can't do it. He grabs her and he's like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to get to the colonel. Then she can deal with it. Like, that's kind of the implied attitude, even though it's never stated. And then he has that conversation with Harun, played by Ken Watanabe, which I'm so glad. Every time I get to see him on screen, I'm so thankful. Like, he's so good.
He's amazing.
He needs to have his own vehicles. And I'm frustrated that he doesn't get more of those opportunities, at least in American films. And he has that conversation with him whenever he gets captured. Taylor gets captured and Harun is telling him, you know what will happen to humans when we win? Nothing. We just want to be free.
Yeah.
And that's a big moment. And then I think the final moment of his turning is finding out that Alphie is actually his kid. It's a copy of his embryo from that he made with his wife, which is the big emotional driving force for him, is finding his wife, Maya. And now to find out that what this person is, this little kid, is actually my kid, and they're full of, and so it's such a soft arc. And the nice thing too about him and this kid and this whole situation, which is what all of this kind of feels like. It feels like a situation more than really a story. Is Narmada, Maya, loved robots. She loved, AI. She saw their humanity through their hardware and their software. And she also loved Joshua, Taylor, who also required robotics in order to be whole, right? He was missing body parts. And so for her, it's no difference. Like, they're getting their humanity through people, and he's getting his humanity through robots, and they're all whole, even in their parts.
Great point. My God.
And none of it is really delivered in a way that drives it home. And that's, I think, what's the Achilles heel of this film, is something that I would love in most films, is how, subtle the messaging is. But at some point you do need to kind of have these strong deliveries, these strong moments. Finding out the humans were the reason for the nuclear explosion, it felt very soft-served. Like, it wasn't hit hard very well. That should have been a massive bomb drop for the audience.
Yeah.
and it's just kind of a throwaway comment. And it's like, well, you might want to ramp up the drama on that just a little bit more, because his reaction isn't very big. It's just like, oh, okay. And what are we having for dessert?
That changes everything.
Everything.
Great point. It's like they have all these subtle things, or like, but there's no. I love your point about him needing robots to be whole, and robots needing humans to also be whole. Like that is throughout the film, but it's never actually established until you actually mention that. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. And yeah, the oh no, humans actually blew up LA. That changes everything. That needs to be a realization moment, or a pinnacle moment of that section of the film.
Because the immediate question is, why doesn't everyone know this? And she says as much. She says why, but the implication is this would end the war if everyone knew it.
Yeah.
And that should be the bigger motivation. Like, you want to destroy Nomad as a big final sequence, but that's not really solving the problem. The problem is humans don't trust and see AI as an enemy.
That doesn't even matter. This war is still going to happen, right? How can AI stop everyone from hating them?
Right.
Because that's the reason. Like, humans hate AI because they think AI destroyed LA. Or that's just one of the reasons, right?
That's the main reason. Is suddenly AI became hostile, and that's that.
Yes. But then they've been hostile because they are killing each other. So now they've been hostile. So the assumption that they were hostile, and now they are hostile. Just destroying Nomad doesn't mean that they're not hostile anymore. So everyone's still going to fight against them. It's like the Middle East. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, we've been killing them. So how can we tell them that we're not hostile?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think that's one of the big hitches is we feel it, even though we can't articulate. This didn't feel resolved. And we're ending on this moment, this beautiful moment with Alphie, who's mourning and celebrating at the same time. And that's such a beautiful shot, and such a beautiful emotion to see her evolve just in that 4, 5, 10 second shot of so upset, and then suddenly realizing like, oh, things are getting better, and everything's going to be okay. And it ends on her smile. God, melt me.
So good.
But the film, I think, doesn't really know what it's trying to say. And I think you said it, because I'm watching this movie. I walk in and I'm expecting an interesting conversation about artificial intelligence, which is hard to come by. Like, we've covered so much ground. What are you going to say that's new in terms of how we think about AI, how we're supposed to interact with it? And I think on the one hand, if we're just talking about that aspect, it's saying that AI ultimately could be a force for good and to coexist alongside with. And that's a positive message. I think we need more of that messaging, because everyone sees AI as a threat, and I really don't. Even if we find a way to give them sentience, and empathy and self-awareness and all those things that you're talking about, I still just don't think the inherent danger is that they're going to wipe us out. There's certainly things you need to be cautious for, because we are programming them. Whenever he says it's just programming, well, that's us. We did that. And so we need to be aware of those things for sure. And this movie, if it wants to talk about how AI is ultimately a force for good, or at least a force for, that isn't a danger, and that is something we can coexist with, it needs to find another way to deliver that message and to drive it home for the end of the film, to find a way to say that in a way that brings a satisfying emotional conclusion, even if it's not going to be an action conclusion, because right now that doesn't exist in here either. Okay, well, what I saw coming into this film, expecting that one thing, a conversation about AI, instead I saw the other thing that you pointed out. I started seeing about, this is actually not about AI. AI is a metaphor for humanity and for othering your enemy and dehumanizing people you don't like. If they're dehumanized, it's so much easier to kill them and to degrade them and to do all the evil necessary things that, power structures want to do to each other. And this movie is trying to make it, and this is the way I saw it, and I didn't know if it was not at all clear if it was intentional or not. To me, getting to the end of the movie is completely unintentional. But if it had been intentional to make a commentary about you need to humanize your enemy in order to make peace and in order to progress, then you can start building around that. Because again, taking out Nomad is also not a route into coexistence, into humanizing your enemy. Instead, that's all delivered through Joshua Taylor, who dies. Like he can't coexist if he's dead. And so you need to find another way to deliver and drive home that message if it's all about humanizing something that you see as a threat. And the moment you can start reevaluating life on those terms, it should drive a new shift in perspective. Not to say that the best way to end this movie is through, a peace summit and a handshake, but there is a way to approach it, probably with some action, but also creates, some satisfying emotional conclusion, because in no version of this, on the movie's terms, which are, nebulous, or in idealistic terms of AI as friends or AI as a metaphor, none of that gets driven home in any emotional conclusion that makes sense. Now, to the extent that it does, it's through sacrifice, right? Taylor is now going to sacrifice himself, but even that didn't feel intentional. It felt like, crap, I can either let you die or let you live. Well, I'm not a complete a-hole, so I'm just going to let you live, and I'm going to willingly eat my bullet. Mm-hmm. That's not the same thing as an actual genuine sacrifice. He didn't make a decision to die. He had to die. There was no other options.
Yeah. He was locked out of the
Yeah. And so that message never really finds its full circle either. And that's kind of the thing that it's wrestling against, is it needed another pass in the writing. And I think Gareth Edwards, that's kind of his Achilles heel. He finds really interesting stories, really interesting things to say, and doesn't do a good job of finishing that message, because the whole third act of this film was rushed. Like, compared to the first, 2 acts, we are really taking our time. We're really experiencing these worlds and these characters and going side by side as they're making their decisions and seeing the scale kind of build out and out and out. And then we get to that third act and it just feels like a sprint to nowhere.
That's interesting.
The kid dragging the mom through the garden felt wrong. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe this is a good use of her time, or that this was a realistic thing for someone her size. I don't feel like she has bionic strength. I feel like she's got the strength of a slightly bigger, 8-year-old or however old she's supposed to be. 5 years, I guess. She feels like slightly stronger than that.
Even if she does have robot strength, we're not shown that throughout the movie. Like, we don't see an example of that. We see example of her other powers, but not of her physical powers. Yeah. So like of lifting things. So yeah, that is kind of like all of a sudden, and why are there a bunch of copies of her? I guess because she's Nirmata, right? And so
so maybe she donated her look to robots previously.
Mm-hmm. The fact it just feels like we're filling in too much.
Yeah. Right.
And he's giving too much of us to us to fill in the story rather than actually telling the story and doing the heavy lifting. I mean, it's not that kind of a movie. Sci-fi's most of the time are not the kind of movie that are just going to make you tell the story. I mean, even stories, iconic stories like 2001 that make you fill in a lot. Like, I mean, still give you a lot. They still give you a lot to then fill in holes in between. So, I agree with you there.
Yeah. And so I think for that sequence, what I would have preferred that is kind of a middle ground would be she takes her out of the bag and realizes she can't drag her, leaves her there in the space and plugs her in. And now, for one, I don't feel like the clock is wrong, because he had 10 minutes on the clock. And now I'm like, there's no way in the last 4 minutes she was able to take her down, drag her halfway across the ship before running out of time. Like, I just felt wrong. And so instead, if you leave her there, and you give her a few moments to try to wake her up, and it's not working. Now we've planted that seed, and now we can still feel like the timeline starts to make a little more sense.
That's a great point.
You know, it still plays well. You give her some more time to spend with her mom, and all that kind of stuff. In a similar way, though a little different, the music, Hans Zimmer, great. What didn't make sense for me was early in the film, they're doing that big mission to go find Alphie, the weapon, and they put on Radiohead, Everything in Its Right Place.
Oh, right.
And I was like, wait, great song, but it pulled me way out of the movie because I started listening to the song. I 100% can't tell you what happened in the sequence that the song is playing because I was just listening.
It was totally random. It was completely random. It was like Gareth was like, "Hey, I love Radiohead and I love this song. Let's jam it into this movie because why not?"
Yeah,
you know?
And of course, it's a great song.
Yeah.
But you have Hans Zimmer, like use him.
And it's the only time really where there's like an actual song in the movie. Like the rest of it is score. So, I mean, they don't revisit it. You know, it's not like a theme going throughout of like either Everything in Its Right Place or the band in general. Like, yeah.
And tonally, it didn't make sense because it's motivated by the characters. They're like getting hyped up to go on a mission with guns blazing, and what do? They put on a mellow track. Like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't if you want to play a mellow track, that needs to be like non-diegetic. It needs to come from outside the world. That's us creating a moment for the film, not the characters in the film creating a mellow moment for themselves. That makes no story sense whatsoever. Yeah. So that was a weird decision. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that I was like, okay, that makes sense. And it works. I think so. For instance, setting up humanity as the bad guys, and AI as the good guys. Cool. I don't think this was wrong. I don't think he did a bad job. In fact, in some ways it's really effective, which is the use of kick the dog storytelling, almost literally, which is when they get out of the chopper, they go to the village, and this is where they're looking for the hatch, to get in. And one of the guys picks up the puppy, like no one's talking. So he grabs this little girl's puppy and puts a gun to its head. And it's like, oh, so he's not kicking the dog. He's going to shoot the dog. And now you know who the bad guy is. This is what, we generally call kick the dog storytelling, where, we like pets, we like dogs. If you kick the dog, we know you're the asshole and you're the bad guy. You're the villain. And so humans are bad because what good guy does this? And there's also elements to me of Vietnam being inserted whenever you're seeing this village being raided by Americans, and they're in this, what I think they call it New Asia. And it's basically where Vietnam is. I mean, there's a lot of countries in this area, Cambodia and whatnot, but and they shoot in all those areas. They're filming in this area. They're using these kind of visual elements of villages and Americans with weapons and terrorizing civilians. Like in every way, I'm just getting like flashbacks over here. And so of course, we're the bad guys, and that's fine. I don't know. I think it works so far as if you want us to just not be on human side and to like AI, like to me, it's a very blunt instrument instead of trying to craft something a little more delicate that I don't want to disassociate from humanity. I think that's my problem. It's like, I still want to find humanity within humanity. Yeah. And I know we get a lot of that through Taylor. And so I'm glad that he never becomes a bad guy in the story, like at all. To the extent that he is, it's in his ignorance at the beginning of the film. And even that is pretty light touch. But I think there's just another version of the story where we're looking at humanity with a little more complexity. And this feels very blunt and obvious in that kind of way.
Yeah. And you brought something up earlier, and I wanted to circle back at it. We were talking about Harun on the boat, right, with Joshua Taylor, and I think that's where he says, you know what'll happen when AI wins? Nothing.
Yeah.
But he's going to kill Taylor.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
How is that? Like, how are you any better than humanity if you're retaliating against someone who honestly is probably your best bet? If you're really that smart, if you're really, like artificial intelligence is that much better than humans, then you know that violence, just for the sake of retaliation or violence, begets only violence. So why would you kill Taylor just because he's there? You think that's going to stop the humans? It's obviously not. And anybody who's more intelligent than human beings would know that. So why are we going to kill him then? Why does he have to escape? Like, and how do you fail at that? Like, I don't, he's literally in front of you. Yeah. So it didn't make AI the better candidate, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. We're not hoping AI will win now because they're just as bad. So
that was interesting. The point. What's funny is I had that exact same conversation in my head while watching that scene. And I was like, okay, maybe, but it's also war. And right now they're doing what they have to until the war can end. And then they can go back to doing, until then they're forced into participating in war. But I think it goes back to what we've been saying, which is what you really spelled out well, which is we're having to do too much filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
You can do that to a point. But that's a good moment for them to just say it out loud. Have Taylor say, okay, you're not going to kill us, but you're going to kill me, huh? And then he can comment, I don't want to, I have to.
You just solved that entire scene for me.
Right.
Just right then, which goes back to your point of they just needed one more pass on the script, I think. Because all of these problems are very solvable with a little bit of dialogue. I mean, and it doesn't have to be awful exposition that we both hate. It can be good exposition. Like what you just said is good exposition. It's one character calling out another character who's then giving the response to that character that fills in the hole for us.
Yes.
That we don't have to ask later on. Like, it makes sense. I have to kill you because that's my mission. That's my mission, but I don't want to. Boom. Like
that's the best. That's the best exposition. Coming through conflict where characters are motivated to find out.
Yes.
He wants to stop dying. He wants to not die. And that's a good motivation for your character to say things, you know, and there's some other things that I'm like, that weren't really clear to me. Like, early on, he gets shot, right? Taylor gets shot. And I can't remember, you know what? I'm going to throw that out because I can't remember if it happened later in the film or at the opening scene. Never mind. So I'll edit that out. I should have made a better note. Anyway, the use of flashbacks is interesting because he's using it to build depth, right? More relationship depth between Maya and Taylor. And he's also using it to build out exposition at certain points. And that's fine. It's tough. Like, I think he does it about as well as you could probably do it. I think in order to do it better, you need to build out more time. And I know he felt probably against the runtime limit on this thing already, which is probably why the final sequence feels so rushed. Is he's like, I'm already at like 215, 220, and I got to wrap this puppy up. And so, but I think building more emotional depth between Taylor and Maya would have been good to have just a little more meat on those bones instead of just memories flashing back. Let's see them fight and resolve. Let's see them go through something emotional together. And then that pulls us into more empathy. Watching characters resolve conflict creates so much more relationship depth than just watching characters be happy together and perfect in bliss. Like that's really hard because it feels plasticky, you know, and we don't buy that. We see it for what it is as an emotional ploy instead of like relational depth. And that's just really, really challenging. But I think the highlights for this thing, man, apparently he really likes to shoot himself. So Gareth is like camera operating most of this movie. And that's cool to me as a director, seeing that done on a big scale. Like, this is an $80 million movie. It certainly looks like a $250 million movie. It's gorgeous. I know everyone's freaking out that they shot it on a Sony FX3, and which I cannot imagine all the fixing that they had to do in post. A lot of noise issues, I'm sure. But his thing, from what I saw in an interview, was it's a light camera. And if he's going to be holding it all day, he doesn't want to get whooped by having a 20, 30 pound rig. Because if you start gearing up, an Alexa, the camera itself might be whatever, 5, 6 pounds, 8 pounds, but it still needs batteries, a fat lens, the Teradek on top for monitoring remotely, for your focus puller, they're going to need. And so you start building on more batteries and more gear. And before you know it, you do have a 30-pound monster on your hands. And it's like, you want to hold that thing for 10 hours? No, you do not. Yeah. And so he wisely said, you know what? I'm comfortable with this. And the nice thing though about the FX3, he said one of the reasons that he wanted to use it was its low light capabilities. And so he could shoot at, a 12,800 ISO on this thing, which means you need much less lighting, which means you need fewer crew members on your G&E team, your grip and electric, so that you're not having to pay those guys that much, money, not just for their work, but for the lighting gear itself. And that also means you're flexible. You can turn around your shot much faster. And I remember hearing he was frustrated working on like Godzilla because he wanted to I like this other angle. Okay, well, that's going to take us a half day to set up because we have trucks and lighting gear and we're going to need
in the way.
Yeah. Wow. So it's going to take 40 people, 3 hours to shift all that around, but we'll get your shot. And he's like, oh, okay, well, let's not do that. Let's save our day and stay where we are and make it work. Whereas here, he doesn't have all that equipment. Now, I think there's a bit of a myth that he was just running and gunning with like him and 3 people. I just can't believe that was the case. I mean, between hair and makeup alone, and props, costuming, like, you're going to have a team of people working on this thing. Now, you might save a lot in terms of gear on set. I know they're Hollywooding, lights on boom poles, that kind of thing. And that's great. You do save a ton in terms of your flexibility on set, but this was not a slim crew. There's just no way. I would have to call bullshit on that. There's just no way you're really that lean. Now, you're lean enough to be mobile and flexible, but you still probably have a good 10, 15 people on your crew minimum, not even including like actors and background extras and all that. But I think his real genius is in his visual effects acuity. Like, he has such a great vision in his head of what he wants to create, what it takes to create it, that he was able to shoot and edit this entire movie and then send it to post. And that's what blows my mind.
Wow. To
be able to say, okay, I know there's going to be this monster shot of this crazy big, whatever, police car, for lack of a better term, a ship, a floating hover ship. Yeah. And I'm going to tilt down from this ship that doesn't exist in my shot. Now, I'm not aware of him using any kind of previs in camera. If he did have that set up, very cool. Great use of, but I just don't think he did. I think he was shooting it in his head and saying, okay, it's probably going to be right about there. I'm going to tilt down. We're going to boom down. Like, he had a crane. They were operating cranes out there. Again, that's grip. Like, if you have dolly tracks, that's grip. You're going to be using a lot of crew members for that stuff. That's not run and gun. I'm sorry. It's not. You're setting up a lot for that stuff. Yeah. But he's thinking through all that stuff and seeing in his head, this is my camera move. We're gonna crane down to Allison Janney on the phone, and we're gonna get a nice shot of her delivering her line, all in proper sequencing, and to be able to edit all of that and then send it to Weta or whoever was doing post work on this thing saves so much time. I can only imagine how grateful the VFX artists were that they're not going to get 6 months into developing a shot and an effect and then get a call like, actually, we know we said it was going to be 2 shots. It's actually 20. And we needed in this shot and this shot and this shot. And this. It's like, effort. And they smile, say thank you, and then curse everyone out on the way to get some coffee. Like, it's so much cheaper.
Amazing.
You know, and even better if he was able to actually lock it, not just picture edit, but color, send it to them. There's just so fewer passes that you have to do. You send out a quick, rigging of everything. Hey, is this does this work? Oh no, make it bigger, or, make this thing jut out like this. Okay, got it. And then once you lock the first pass, the draft, the rough, then you can start quickly scaling it up, like adding textures, adding lighting, adding all the color that matches the scene, because you know exactly what you need to match. And there's not going to be, and where it's going to be in the next shot. So much faster, and you probably saved a good $100 million on video effects alone, and made everyone happy in the process. But he has a background in it. He understands how it works. And this is also, I think, the discipline that's been lost in filmmaking, because that's kind of the way it used to be. You think Spielberg was rolling up on set and winging it for Jurassic Park? He knew what he wanted. He knew what every shot was going to be. Because he had to be that discipline. James Cameron had to be that discipline making Terminator and The Abyss. Like, he knew what he needed way before getting on set. And I think too many people are showing up on set with a good idea and then changing it on the fly, which works if you're doing it all yourself, I guess. But if you're putting other people on the hook and saying, how much are you going to charge to do X, Y, and Z, but then changing it to ABC later, you're just jamming everyone. And so visually, this is one of the most stunning sci-fi films I've ever seen. I just wish the story elements, matched it, because he could have had one for the record books, especially with all the performances, because the emotion in this movie is so good. I mean, even the little girl crying over the puppy broke my heart.
Oh man, that felt real.
Real.
Like, poor little thing.
The bomb in the backpack when they're getting into the chopper, and they're feeling we just got out. And then she sees there's a bomb on her, and the horror on her face as she's screaming before the explosion was amazing. Like, he's getting such great performances from everyone. And just that extra, 2 months, 3 months of thinking through your story, and fine tuning it, I think would have paid just massive dividends. But anyway, there's other little elements. I like the sound design. It's interesting. I think I would do things differently. I'm just a different type of filmmaker when it comes to interacting with your visual elements. Like the Nomad is hovering, and it's got that gorgeous laser that starts scanning everything. And he uses that sound effect of the woo, 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 right? And that's cool. It works. It looks, and this is a very basic kind of fundamental aspect of filmmaking, which is if you see something, you need to hear it. That's why we hear guns move around all the time. Like, they got all these loose parts on the inside of them every time. It's like, I don't know if that thing is safe to shoot.
Great point.
But that's just a common thing. And I get it. I don't know that I personally like leaning that way for the way I tell stories. I feel like it's much more grounded and believable when things interact in a way that, not that we expect to in a movie, but in a way that we experience in real life. I think that can pull people in further, depending on the story you're telling and all the context stuff, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's still cool. I mean, it looks cool. It sounds cool. I'm afraid of it. Those explosions are some of the coolest explosions I've seen, like ever. They're freaking amazing.
I agree. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of all I got.
Well, that's exhausting. Well said. I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think it just needed a little bit more in those few moments. And then at the end, it just felt wrong. Like, I don't know how to say it. Great point about the dragging her out. I love your solution there to just plug her in. And then all of a sudden she just happens to be in the field because she's charged up and has wandered out there, like, why not? That feels, and then they just see each other. Yeah. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to add. I think that sci-fi is very important. I don't care if I love it or not. I think it's like, there's a reason why it's our favorite genre, I think, because it takes something that is fantastical in the moment and turns it into reality. And maybe in 50, 100 years, it could be reality. I mean, there's a reason why Star Trek is Star Trek, right? There's a reason why we talk about like warp drive still today and beam me up, Scotty, because we think, these things could be reality later on, and it inspires us to, I don't know, and create new frontiers and to push the boundaries of what is actually possible. If you look at what was possible 100 years ago, it was nothing like it is today. So, and that's just 100 years. Imagine, 200-300 years from now. Well, without, new and cool storytelling, science fiction based, which just means that it doesn't exist now. Like that's it. That's all science fiction is taking something that doesn't exist and put it in a world where it does. That's it. What do you want that to be? And it could be anything. It's not like horror where the whole point is to create suspense and either scare you or make you feel stressed. Like this is something different. This is creating something from nothing. I think that's more important than any other genre, because it makes us, think about what possible means, and yeah. So I will always take sci-fi, no matter how good or bad the film is or disjointed it might feel. I think that Gareth Edwards did a great job in a lot of ways. And I love that it's getting the buzz. I love that he used that camera and so people are talking about it and everything. Maybe we'll get more like it, and they'll be a little bit more buttoned up like you in the suggestions you've made,
Oh man.
So,
well said. What are you going to recommend this week?
This week, I had it. Where is it? Oh, I've watched a lot this week, but I'm not going to recommend a film. I'm going to recommend a program, and I know you're not in love with it, but I am. I'm going to recommend DaVinci Resolve. I just kind of discovered it, and I know it's been around for a long time, but it feels much more along the lines of how I like to create things, and I just love the power that you get. Like I've been using Premiere for years, and I know you're a Premiere user, but I just feel like, and I think you agree, that like the coloring in Premiere is atrocious. It's terrible. It's a complete afterthought. And if you need to color, you never do it in there because you have like a couple of options, and that's I don't know. It's just an afterthought. But in Resolve, it is the feature. I mean, you can edit in it if you want to, but it is the feature, and there's a free version and you can use it to your heart's content. If you want to pay for it, you pay for it once. There's no subscription based bullshit. You pay for it once and it's yours. And you get all the updates and all that stuff. And it's super powerful. And not only that, it's like fun to play with. Like I started learning it and I thought, oh my God, this is so much fun. I want to go to the next shot. Okay, now I want to go to the next shot. And I'd spend hours on it, just fucking around learning. And I just, so it's a lot of fun. So I'll recommend that, DaVinci Resolve.
Nice. Yeah, I love it for coloring. I hate it for editing. That is the antithesis for my workflolike. Like I work in a very specific way. But I know a lot of editors who swear by it and they're like, F Premiere, which I totally get. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just need something better, especially whenever I start incorporating like After Effects and some of those elements. But
for sure,
for coloring, at least at a minimum. But if editing is if that's your workflow for editing, then I'm sure it's freaking amazing.
Well, and the cool thing is, when we talked about it, you can edit and all that stuff in Premiere and After Effects, and then just import the timeline, and it gives you clipped up. All your clips are separated just like they were in Premiere.
Ready to go.
Coming from a world of music where it is impossible to do that from DAW to DAW, from like Studio One to Logic to Pro Tools, it is impossible to do that and have it make any sense. It's all a freaking mess. If you finish in one DAW, if you start in one DAW, you should finish in the same one because it is a nightmare. Coming from that world to this, where I had done my edit in Premiere and then I wanted to put it in Resolve, it'll just import. You can just import the timeline, and it looks like it did in Premiere, and everything is there. It's like, wow, why can't music be this way? This is so beautiful. So you can keep your Premiere and edit in there, and then just do color and resolve. It's so great. So anyway,
nicely done.
Okay.
I'm gonna recommend a book, also not a movie. Ted Chiang, Story of Your Life and Other Stories. It's a book of short stories. I'm not a big short story fan, but after reading 2 of his books, I also read Exhalation. I suddenly was really into it. I like, if I'm going to read a book, I want it to be one big story that I can just kind of sit with for, a week. And his stories they make sense as short stories because they have some big ideas, but they don't necessarily resolve in a way that you would want a book to resolve in. So I can see why he kept them as short stories to give you an idea, to punch you in the face with some good science fiction and fantasy and all kinds of stories. But if you want something that's bite-sized, make you think, has some really interesting thoughts, Ted Chiang's books are amazing. And I really loved Story of Your Life and Other Stories. Very much worth the read. So cool. Art Spotlight this week. Our friend of the show, Byron Reese, he's done a lot of work in artificial intelligence and has a lot to say. He's written some books on it. And I cut together a demo reel for him. He does a lot of speaking engagements. And so he asked me to cut a demo reel for him and his speaking engagements. And so I did. And so it's like 8-minute, 9-minute video of him telling these stories. And it's interesting. And if you want to feel inspired and hopeful and less, pessimistic about the future, he's got the antidote for you. Like, he's so optimistic about the direction of humanity and the direction of how we interact with artificial intelligence and all these ways. And with reason. That's the thing, is I know things look, dour right now. There's so much war going on in the world. And there's so many things that we need to fix and get better at. And it can be easy to lean into the negativity, which is such a light way of saying it, but it's so dark. And lean away from the darkness if you want a ray of hope that's based in logic. That's not just whimsy and crossing your fingers. I think he's got a lot to say, and you'll get a good taste of that in his reel that I cut together. So yeah, you'll find that in the show notes. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to cover a film called Adaptation, Charlie Kaufman. I think it's only a second script that we've covered, which the first one was Eternal Sunshine. And so we'll look at his other film that is pretty famous with Nick Cage and Adaptation. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a note, subscribe, review, tell us what you find interesting, and maybe we'll cover a film in that vein. And if you want to comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/thecreator.
And our quote of the day is from Isaac Asimov. Individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinder critics and philosophers of today, but the core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation if we are to be saved at all. That's exactly it. If we don't look at what is impossible, how could it ever be possible? Then we're just living right now with however things are, Can you imagine your life without a microwave? I mean, really?
Certainly not without an air fryer.
I mean, there you go. There you go. I mean, all of these things they were once considered witchcraft or impossible or something that could never even be imagined, right? Because, and I guess we don't need to attribute it all to the genre of science fiction. That too was an invention at one point. But just the idea of looking at something differently, not even to the future, but looking at something differently that will then craft the future is what's so cool. That's what science fiction is, right? So.
I feel like as entertainers we look at progress and we see the scientists, we see the engineers, and the researchers who are out there doing the real work. But it takes dreamers. It takes people who tell stories to really capture the imagination of those people. Like, what are they aiming for if we don't also provide them with some ammunition? And it's our creativity as storytellers, and as an audience member, just me sitting and watching the creator, is helping all of that. And it doesn't feel real because I'm so far removed and I'm just sitting in a seat. But it's all a part of one big society, one big culture, one human element. And it's me showing up to the theater and saying, I want more of that, and I'm going to pay for it. That's what's going to keep propelling us forward, is saying, I like that. And getting the imagination going. Sony FX3, well, maybe now the FX4 or 3B will have whatever global shutter, and maybe it'll have built-in ND filters and XLR inputs, so that I will buy the X3B, you know? And that's what I need as a filmmaker. You just don't know. And storytelling is such a crucial part. It's such a fundamental element to humanity and to why we are here today in the first place. Without storytelling, we don't really have a lot of purpose, I don't think. You know, it's all becomes a little too primitive and too primal, whereas these are the things that keep us going. This is where we find hope. You can't find hope if there's no story to tell. You know, you can't find solutions if you don't start exploring those problems of the impossible, like Todd was talking about. Like, we need all of that. And we're all playing our part in ways that sometimes we just don't appreciate. And science fiction is such a crucial element because we are taking a grounded reality and saying, what if we just changed one thing? What if, you know, our robots could think for themselves? What if? Just what if? And that's the really cool thing that science fiction does, because it says, here's a problem with humanity. Now let's talk about how we might create that symbolically through science fiction. You know, horror films sometimes do that. Science fiction is always thinking about that. How do we create the problems of humanity and talk about them in a way that no one feels accused, no one feels the finger pointed at them? Like, I thought of Vietnam. They didn't say Vietnam once in this entire film. Yeah. You know, you could put, like Todd said, fill in the blank. These two people, humans and AI, could fill in for anybody, you and your neighbor. Like, it could really stand in for anything. And that's what science fiction is so good at. I think it is core to our salvation in so many ways, because it makes us think in ways that we can step outside of ourselves and start empathizing in other people's lives and other people's experiences, because we're no longer on the block, you know. And that's just a beautiful way of creating ideas for solutions in a way that is pretty inoffensive and makes you think. Yeah.
Love it. Great quote, man. Wow.
Asimov.
Well, this was fun, man.
Yeah, this was good.
This is great. Way better than I thought it would be, to be honest.
I was scared coming in.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys had a good time too, and hopefully we shed some light on this film a little bit, the creator. And you, maybe if you have any other things to add, we'd love to hear it in the comments. Please subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts, share us with your friends. It all helps a lot. If there's a film that you'd like to see us cover that we haven't in the 254 episodes that we've done, I know there's a lot more films that we haven't done. So please make a suggestion. Maybe we will cover it. We'll at least respond to you, probably. Maybe, if you're lucky. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.
Oh, no.